Welcome to episode number 5 of the Q&A show. I'm Dave Dreas.
And I'm Scott Emick.
We are settled in here to do this. Are you ready? Scott, what's going on today?
I'm pretty excited. I've been doing something for about 4 weeks here, and we had this question come in that was pretty timely. So we're going to talk about what I've been doing, your assignment for me. And
well, first off, thank you very much for sending questions our way in the YouTube channel, on Facebook, and some other different social avenues. It's allowed us to do a much better job at trying to figure out what you want to hear about. So what Scott was referring to was intermittent fasting. So a topic of conversation, something that I've done years ago, and something that I just had him start to do probably about 4 months ago. 4 weeks ago.
4 weeks ago. Yeah.
4 weeks ago.
Say, no, it wasn't
4
that
months,
long.
he should be at about 2% body fat right now. Right?
I'm at actually -1.
-1. That's perfect. What's the question? Someone asked
the question. So Stephen wrote in with this one. I've read a lot about intermittent fasting. Is there anything I need to know before I try it?
Okay, good question. First things first, there's a couple different ways, I guess you could say, of intermittent fasting. So I can't remember how long ago, but the Warrior Diet came out. That was like a 4-hour feasting window and a 20-hour fasting window. That's the premise of intermittent fasting, is you're going to have a feasting window and you're going to have a fasting window.
And there are variances in that
There's
window,
going to be
right?
variances. So the variances are kind of the different styles that people would do. So like the Warrior Diet was 4 hours of eating and then 20 hours of fasting in a 24-hour period. You also have the other Martin Berkham, I think that's how you say his last name. He kind of pioneered or was behind the 8 hours of feasting, 16 hours of fasting. And then you have some people, I know Brad Pilon up in Canada, he does kind of like a full day or two of fasting. So he might stop eating at 8 o'clock at night and then he will fast all the way until 8 o'clock that night of not eating food.
So two of them are kind of extremes, and then there's the 8-hour window.
But think of it this way, like in a typical American diet, you're eating for 16 hours of the day and sleeping for 8 hours of the day.
Right.
So you wake up at 6 a.m., you have breakfast, whatever that may be, you go to bed at 10 a.m., you might have something before you go to bed. All of a sudden, during that time, you've been eating food throughout the day. So it's almost, if you want to do the lean gains approach, which is the 8-hour feast and the 16-hour fast, it's almost like you're flipping that.
Yeah.
So what have you been doing?
So I've been doing the 8-hour feast window, and so I'll get up in the morning, I'll drink soda water. Soda water fills the stomach. It gives you the impression, or your body the impression that you're kind of full. Yep. And then I actually add coffee into the equation because coffee is a natural appetite suppressant, of course, and a stimulant. So, that gets me through to about noon, 1 o'clock. And between noon and 1 o'clock, it varies on the day, but that's when I'll start eating.
So typically what people do then, in an ideal world, you'd want to kind of work out around that 11 o'clock time frame, if that's what you want to do. Work out beforehand, have that big meal post-workout, which is going to be your first meal of the day. And then from there, you're going to eat, during that 8-hour window. If, you've heard us talk about it in other episodes, if you're counting macros, you still want to hit your macro profile within that 8-hour window. So
and it's tough.
It's tough. So if you want to get 200 grams of protein, 200 grams of carbs, and 100 grams of fat, just as an example, you got to try to fit that into an 8-hour window versus a 16-hour window.
Yeah.
Which we were just talking about this the other day. A lot of times people, or at least you've heard that if you were to eat, smaller meals throughout the day, you're going to eat less. Or if you didn't eat breakfast, you're going to then binge later on in the day. I've actually found, and I'm not doing a study or anything on, but I would guess if you're eating 5, 6, 7 meals a day, even though they're smaller, you have a greater risk of over-consuming because you're constantly eating versus trying to get everything in 3 meals in a shortened time. You might feel like you're over-consuming, but just in my opinion, that's just what I think would happen.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that because, that it kind of lends to that scavenging sort of eating.
Totally.
Where, just whatever you see out, whatever's in front of you, we
open up. Food diet.
Exactly. The seafood diet, but I just find it's really difficult to get the calories in that 8-hour window. Sometimes I don't find that I'm hungry enough to eat a solid meal, and I'll just revert to protein, protein chug. So just protein and water. And so it's difficult, but you get there.
Let's talk just real quick before we let you go. The the premise or the benefits behind intermittent fasting. I think with what he was talking about, he's lost a little bit of weight. He's gotten a little bit tighter around the stomach. I think it's going to help from a weight loss standpoint and fat loss standpoint.
Yeah.
It can help reduce inflammation. Think of if you're eating throughout the whole day, your body is constantly, eating. It's constantly digesting, I should say, because you're eating, and it's constantly working. And that is going to put off some sort of inflammation. So you're reducing that by only eating for 8 hours. And then for that 16-hour fast, not nearly as much. It can help reduce stress, so cortisol, hypertension.
Yep.
It can help, what are some other things that was on there? Hypertension.
I think the most noticeable thing is that those fat stores that are in the body become the fuel source in those long periods of time where you're fasting.
Yep.
And so that I was telling you about this earlier, that subcutaneous fat layer in that lower part of the abdominal region is reduced, and that's a big benefit for me.
I think that was a good question.
Yeah.
There are benefits. You could probably just Google benefits. I'll link some below too as well, some pertinent articles that might add some more value and information to it. But the biggest thing is give it a shot. I like the 8-16, 8 hours feasting, 16 hours fasting. It just works well for my schedule. I know people that have done the Warrior Diet have done a great job, so it's just completely up to you on what you want to try. But give it a shot. I think it'd be very beneficial. If you have questions, feel free to comment on that below, and I think we covered everything.
Yeah. Follow us on Facebook,
Snapchat, subscribe Instagram, all that fun.
And drop those
stuff.
questions in the box below.
All right, have a good one.